look, here's their bio. Now, I need cataracts. Hopefully I'll get them in the next couple months, right? I can't read this.
Want me to read it? I got bifocal contact lenses.
I'm having fun with it. Now, of course, I've learned the old person trick. You know, we can get to their photo, we can get it up and kind of use it as a magnifying glass. But actually, I'm going to introduce Captain Webb first, and Captain Webb's got a long bio. So to keep from being here another hour and having some of these old people fall asleep on you, what we're going to do is just kind of condense it. All right. But Captain Webb is with Coast Guard Polar Coordination Office, and he's the chief of that office. Now, I want to mention just a couple things. So he's leading our strategic coordination for the polar region matters across the interagency and the whole of our government partners as the top advisor for the Arctic and Antarctic engagements. Now, I want to mention something else. He's a naval engineer, which makes him be well qualified for that. But all of those who recall Tom talking to us yesterday about the 83, 84 mishap, remember where we got that big gash in our hull? All right. So the part of that stuck out to me was our FNS, Rongula. All right. So when it looked like the ship was going to go down, he grabbed all the satchel of money and checks and everything else, and even strapped it and I think handcuffed it to himself, right?
Handcuffed.
Okay. So I say that because here when I'm looking at this bio, our good captain was over in the 1st District, and he had budget mission execution of up to $11 billion. And if you notice our good captain, he's quite a husky guy, so somebody like your FNS would not be responsible.
This is my kind of reunion.
Anyways, I thought I'd try to tie that in. So, as the good captain's coming up, so in all my career with the Coast Guard and all, of course, most of a good amount of our Coast Guard officers come from the Coast Guard Academy. And then, of course, we get a good amount of them also through our OCS. And we also have a few, just like the captain, who come from the Maritime Academy.
This is great. What an introduction.
I warned you.
So, I just have a couple of anecdotes. First off, it's an honor to be here. Keith, you reached out to Sam Blaze in my office. He's now XO 4-star a few months back, and get arms around it. So, preparing remarks and things. I just wanted to pass a couple things. The talking and the passion. You're patriots. Everyone in here is a patriot, and it's an honor to be here just amongst you and listening to your stories. I met Mr. Lee from 1955 and 56. And I met my Missouri kin over there that was the investigator on that New Year's Day in 1984. Right off the bat, maybe an icebreaker. Those that were on board WAGB 281, January 1st, 1984. Could you stand up?
People who were on board.
Were on board.
We're on board.
Give them a round. Thank you. You're heroes. You're heroes. Reading up a little bit on this, and are my slides available?
Yes.
Yeah. Would you
Yes.
mind?
Yes.
Not.
No, they're available. They're
Yes,
available.
I'm at headquarters. We do things by slides. We breathe by slides, but
They are available.
I'll just leave it there for right now. And so I was thinking about it, not been on an icebreaker, And introductions. First off, let me introduce also someone here with us, the 44th Commanding Officer of Coast Guard Yard, Captain Overmeyer, Dave Overmeyer. So 25-year history, of which plays into Westwind, right, being home ported in Baltimore in the 70s. But Dave, it's an honor to be here with you as well. So break, going back to, hey, how is I going to affiliate? What are some vignettes I can bring to affiliate? And then I'm like, well, don't worry about it, Chris. They're coasties, and they're ice breaking. They've done the ice breaking mission, and that's very much a very important mission, and it's a statutory mission that is unique to the Coast Guard. We need our icebreakers yesterday, we need them today, we really need them yesterday, but we need them today, and we definitely need them tomorrow. So I'll get into a little bit more in some of my slides. I reached out to one of my shipmates. He did 44 years in the Coast Guard. He retired a couple years ago. Some of you may know him, especially if you were on the lakes. His name's Mike DeVonzo. And I'm like, hey Mike, I've got this speaking engagement, a bunch of coasties and a bunch of folks from Westwind. Oh man, you gotta call this guy. He's on the wind class and he knows all about the Lend-Lease program that happened at Roosevelt, and he can tell you this and that. I'm like, all right, well, let me start with him. And his name, he apologizes for not being here. He's in upstate New York. His daughter is being married. His name's Dennis Thorseth. He was on board in 75, 76, and 77. But he passed a couple things I learned from him about Westwind. And, the Pacer Goose mission, our office is doing the MOU for Pacer Goose and some other things. But in doing a little bit of the research and all that, the dry dock that Westwind went on board in that time frame would have been when the Edmund Fitzgerald went down, and would have been on-scene commander when Dennis was on board. And I found that interesting that he brought up the on-scene, but he knew the captain's names of the Wood Rush, which was out of Duluth at the time, which was the on-scene commander for the Edmund Fitzgerald. And it kind of tied a couple stories and things, but Dennis was very passionate, and I talked to him for about an hour and a half in the middle of the day. I had people coming around in the room, I'm like, no, this is more important. Like I'm listening to stuff, I don't care. Hearing these stories and hearing these things, it was connected. That passion I bring back to this room. It's a delight to be here, and even being on active duty now 31 years, having some tie to each of your service and your time on board Westwind, it's remarkable, and it's been very fun. So a couple other things to see here. Oh yeah, if anybody, you probably have these. If you haven't, Keith, this is the vessel mishap, the Class Alpha vessel mishap from the investigation. But I wanted to just read something in one of the conclusions of the whole thing, because a lot of you, 5 of you were there for that are in this room. So I'm not at all saying this is it, or this is a replication of what you know, because it doesn't. But I want to kind of bring in the context of what we're doing today, and a little bit on the fleet of tomorrow. The U.S. Coast Guard, so there's a little bit of analysis and there's recommendations and there's findings of the report, but back in the recommendations of the investigation that occurred from the event and the ice shelf, when it was beset on the ice shelf from 1984, and when all of December there was a casualty, you guys know, there's a propeller damage, and all the things that were going. The U.S. Coast Guard should increase the distribution of cruise reports to each icebreaker to provide copies of the COOPS. That's happening today. Cruise reports are being shared Ice forecasting should be refined to provide warnings of changing conditions, pressure, pace movements, and alternate routing recommendations to vessel operating in the air. That's happening on an absolute magnified scale with National Science Foundation, NOAA, the Coast Guard. So the operating profile and the predictability in terms of supporting operations, it's nothing like what you went through. The advances of things, it's probably a lot easier now today than it was. But what's germane to me is the conclusions and recommendations out of this event and the catastrophic event of it. There were no lives lost, and you were able to do your job and make the repairs necessary and to get out of theater and such. But found it interesting, and that was part of the research. So let's see here. Let's go to the next slide, if we would. Yeah, okay, a little bit about us. This is our office. The Polar Coordination Office, what does that mean? It's a headquarters entity. We are the Polar Enterprise belly button at headquarters for PAC area, land area. We do all the strategic messaging. We're working with a lot of policies. A lot of things have come out pertaining to the Arctic, geopolitically, as well as strategic engagements of the remaining space probably on this Earth that has the resources and the oil and the gas reserves and the proteins to keep up with this crazy world we're in, okay? And by the way, any comments I make, I'm not necessarily making them. This is Chris Webb just talking here. So if you're recording any of this, so our office, it became an initial operating capability. We have the only position description that's a senior advisor for the Arctic is in our office. This is us with the vice commandant, kind of pounding our chest a little bit. We made it our initial operating capability last year. So enough on that, the vision mission. I just wanted to let you know who we are, where I'm from, what we do. We punch up in our weight class. Daz and Ferguson with DOD, Iris Ferguson's shop is our equivalent in DOD. Her office has a budget of a couple $2 billion. Ours right now is about $315,000. So, but we influence the resource proposals and things for the enterprise, training techniques, policy, TTPs, those types of things. If you could scroll up to the next one, I appreciate it, sir. Last one on policy, and we're getting into some fun from some cutters and some ships and some share and tell with you. But Homeland Security has become national security. I say that in terms of policies. This became a lexicon in around 2018, 2019, nationally in Washington, inside the Beltway, in Moscow. There's a lot of definitions of the Arctic Circle and polar code definitions, et cetera. For the Coast Guard, when we say we're Arctic, we're referring to the definition as defined by the Arctic Research and Policy Act of '84. What I really wanted to show you about this is there's a lot of different things that mean security. The term security started becoming a part, like I said, more of a lexicon in the 17-18 time frame, and things like the National Strategic Arctic Region, the NSAR policy from the White House came out, DOD released the policy. We're the only service and the only agency that has an implementation plan. It's called the Arctic Strategic Implementation Plan. Okay, Captain, great. What does that mean? It means we still are leading in the interagency for all things that pertain to whether it be icebreakers or whether it becomes a national sovereignty or a indigenous population security issue. we're wrapped around that. Our office is doing those types of things. More importantly on this chart, I just note the size of the EEZ in the left there around Alaska. It's larger than, and I'm sure if you guys fail it, you don't need to be on an icebreaker to understand this. I was talking to someone, we were talking about Steve White and what they're doing at some of the things in D17, right? In the Marine Exchange Program, which is an augmentation of D17 SAR capabilities, and their command center has been expanded and put on steroids by these patriots at the Marine Exchange. Because of the blue area, that's the EEZ. Alaska represents, we are an Arctic nation and we are Arctic 8 because of Alaska. That is the reason we are an Arctic nation. So when we talk about the European Arctic or the Russian Arctic or the Asian Arctic, it's really the Russian Arctic, or our US Arctic, when you start looking at the EEZ zone in terms of fisheries and IUU fishing and the unregulated or unlawful fishing that zone, it's larger than the entire lower 48 combined. So security becomes an issue, and national security and homeland security is meshing, and that's the message I wanted to take away. It means a lot because we are in homeland security. So we can become a duality in terms of the national defense, the sovereignty side with DOD, as well as the homeland. And we're seeing and we're influencing those policies from DOD to include homeland. That's an important thing, particularly for Coast Guard missions like icebreaking. All right, enough on that. I'm off my soapbox, no more policy talk, that's it. I just want to get that out. That's the 101, we do this every day to a lot of entities. Sir, if you scroll up, please. Okay, some stuff here. So when let me see, what does it say?
Pass command.
Oh yeah, this is, okay, the Pace of Goose, the 94. Hey, one thing I found interesting in part of the research for this, and so yeah, the commanding officers are listed.